Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video we're going to take a look at our next algorithm, which is Celsius to Fahrenheit. So this is a really common problem that we encounter in the real world. When we travel to other countries outside of the US, their temperatures are in Celsius, and I've kind of got no clue if somebody tells me it's 26 degrees Celsius. Should I be wearing a jacket? Celsius. Is that a jacket day? Is that shorts? I really don't know, so I need to convert it to Fahrenheit. This is a perfect opportunity to define a procedure and make our computer do the work for us. So let's create a new REPL project, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and we'll call it temperature. So our goal is going to be to convert Celsius temperatures to Fahrenheit. So let's define a JavaScript function here. And the way you always do that is you type the function keyword, and then we say something like a descriptive name for our function, Celsius to Fahrenheit. I don't know how to spell Fahrenheit. I think that's right. And then we define a code block, which is going to be the group of code that runs every time we call this function. All right, so this one is actually a little different than the Rickroll one. If we're going to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit, we're going to need to actually tell it a temperature in Celsius. So what we can do here is every time we call this function, we're going to be converting a specific temperature. So let's put a variable for that temperature here. So whenever we call this function, we're going to say, okay, example function calls. So defining the function here, and then the example function calls. What this is going to look like when we call it is we're going to use Celsius to Fahrenheit, and then we're going to plug in a specific number here. Like here, it would be 26 that we're plugging in. So Celsius is going to be the temperature. The input is the temperature in Celsius. And you can see that up here, right there. All right, so here we go. How do we convert these? So I actually have to Google this. So let me go over here and let's do a Celsius to Fahrenheit Google. Okay, so they've actually got a function for doing this for us. Let's see, if we go to images. Perfect. There's a math formula for doing this. So it looks like what we do here is we can just use this formula. So if we want to convert 35 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit, we plug that 35 in here, and then this all equals the Fahrenheit. So this is a common thing that people use when they're constructing programming procedures, math procedures. So here we go. Let Fahrenheit equal 9 divided by 5 times the Celsius number plus 32. So what we're doing here is we're creating a variable for the Fahrenheit temperature, and we're saying the Fahrenheit temperature is equal to 9/5 times the Celsius temperature. If you want to see that in a more general formula, this is a specific example. Fahrenheit equals 9/5 times the Celsius number plus 32. So that's where we're getting this procedure part from. And then the next part of the procedure is maybe we need to see this value somewhere. So let's do a console.log. And what we could do here is we could say, every time we do this conversion, we want to see the Celsius value plus the string. I'm going to put a space here. Celsius plus degrees Celsius. Gosh, I'm really struggling with spelling this morning. Celsius plus degrees Celsius is actually plus, and now we'll plug in the Fahrenheit value here, plus degrees Fahrenheit. And I always feel like the hardest part of these programming problems is the spacing of the strings. So let's just see this one more time. Our function is going to be calculate, I'm just adding some comments here, calculate the Fahrenheit value, and then output to the console the required information. So let's see how this looks. This is my Rickroll program, so I'm not going to use that. I'm going to actually open this here. Ooh, Celsius is not defined, so I do have a spelling error in line 9. This should be Celsius, like that, so that it matches the spelling here. So yeah, I make the spelling errors too. Okay, so here we go. 26 degrees Celsius is actually this degrees Fahrenheit. That rounding error is really cute in the computer, 0.800000001. So we haven't talked about this, but there's something that goes on when a computer uses decimals called a floating point error, which gives us this weird decimal. Maybe what we could do here is, let's take Fahrenheit, and let's make that equal to the math.round version of the old version of Fahrenheit. So what this will do is it will round our Fahrenheit number to a whole number. And it will, so let me just outline that again. We calculate the Fahrenheit value. We're going to say, okay, let the new value of Fahrenheit equal the rounded version of what we just calculated. And math.round is a built-in function to JavaScript. So here we go. Much better. All right, so if it's 26 degrees Celsius out, it's actually a pretty pleasant day. I probably don't need a jacket or shorts, maybe. Maybe I would go shorts, probably. This is pretty hot for me. It's hard to tell, though, so a lot of the time what programmers do is they use something called test cases. So we can look at some more example calls. So I actually know a couple of facts about Celsius and Fahrenheit. I know that freezing is 0 degrees Celsius. Test case. 0 degrees Celsius is actually 32 degrees Fahrenheit because both of these are freezing. So if we plug in 0 instead, let's see what we get. 0 degrees Celsius is actually 32 degrees Fahrenheit. That agrees with my expectation. I also know one other fact about these. I know that -40 is the same in both. So -40 degrees Celsius is actually also -40 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's plug -40 in as the Celsius and see if it gives us -40 for the Fahrenheit. Yes, that also works. So the benefit of using a program like this is, this isn't really a test case, this is the problem from the posing of the problem from the question, which is right over here. Oh, I deleted it. There it is. One example that I think is particularly interesting with this is if we did something like, instead of these test cases, maybe I can delete these now. Maybe an interesting application is this, is if we had the weather for the week. So I'm going to create a variable called weather for the week. So let's say I'm in France and I'm going hiking, and the weather for the week is going to be, I don't know, maybe 7 Celsius values. So I think organizing it as a list of temperatures would be the most important, or the best data structure for you doing this. So let's say the first day it's going to be 20 degrees Celsius. The next day it will be 15. The day after this it will be 26. The day after it, let's say it's 30 degrees Celsius. Then it's going to be 35, 40, and then finally, let's have it be, I don't know, like a cold spell, and it goes down to 12. So if we're looking at the weather for the week, and we have these values for the next 7 days, what we can do that's really cool is we can actually use our function on each one of these values. So to do that, what you can do is you can say, take weather for the week, And since we want to use this function on each of those, we can use a for each loop where we take from here, each of these things is going to be a temperature. Sorry, so we put the second set of parentheses there. And then we say, okay, take each of those temperatures and do this. The thing we want to do is to use our Celsius to Fahrenheit converter. And here we want to input whatever the current temperature is as we go through each one of these. So we'll use that temperature value. So here we go. We can actually do the whole week all at once using a for each loop. And it's incredibly powerful to have this little procedure here. Another thing that's really nice about this is you might wonder, why can't you just copy and paste this procedure like 7 times? You could, but one thing that's really nice about it is, let's say we wanted to end each of these with a little exclamation point, or maybe 3 exclamation points. You only have to change that in the definition of the function, because now every time we call this function, every time we use it, it looks back at the procedure here and says, oh, I'm supposed to use 3 exclamation points. So it's very easy to change our function so that now it looks a little different. And that's really useful.